In the early 1880s, county maintenance records from the American South began to reference sealed interior spaces within former antebellum plantations. These structures, many abandoned or partially occupied after the Civil War, were frequently inspected for taxation, inheritance disputes, or land reassessment. In several such records, officials noted closed interior chambers whose access had been deliberately obstructed decades earlier. Archived courthouse renovation logs from the 1880s indicate that during structural surveys of aging plantation houses, workmen occasionally encountered bricked-over door frames, warped oak doors reinforced with iron fastenings, or interior locks no longer matching any surviving key. In one documented instance, referenced indirectly through regional newspapers of the period, a locked interior room was opened after remaining sealed for approximately 60 years. Contemporary accounts do not describe the event as sensational. Instead, the tone is restrained and administrative. The opening occurred not out of curiosity, but necessity. The building, long neglected, was considered unsafe. County-appointed laborers were instructed to clear interior spaces to assess structural damage. According to period descriptions, the room showed no sign of occupation since the 1820s. Dust lay undisturbed. Air within was stagnant. Objects inside bore the unmistakable marks of long disuse: rotted textiles, rusted metal fittings, and paper materials degraded by moisture and insects. No effort appeared to have been made to retrieve or preserve the contents across generations. 1880s newspapers avoided speculative language. They focused instead on what the room represented: a remnant of plantation authority frozen in place. What unsettled observers was not a single object, but the deliberate act of long-term sealing itself. Plantation records from earlier decades contain no mention of the room's purpose. Its absence from inventories suggested intentional omission. Historians reviewing such cases later noted that sealed rooms on plantations often reflected systems of control rather than storage. These spaces, rarely ventilated and commonly hidden from exterior view, were part of the architecture of enforcement. By the 1880s, their reopening forced communities to confront physical evidence of practices that official records had long minimized or ignored. The room's opening did not resolve questions, it raised them, quietly, persistently, and without conclusion. By the 1880s, the American plantation system no longer functioned as it had before the Civil War. However, its physical structures remained. Many plantations continued operating in reduced form, relying on tenant farming, sharecropping, or wage labor. Census records from the decade reflect extreme economic imbalance, with formerly enslaved populations now legally free but economically constrained. Plantation houses built in the early 19th century often retained original architectural features. These included interior rooms with restricted access, designed during a period when plantation owners exercised near-total authority over enslaved people. By the 1880s, these rooms had lost official purpose, but they remained physically intact. Social hierarchies persisted. County records indicate that white landowners retained legal authority over property, while black laborers were subject to informal systems of coercion. Law enforcement logs from rural counties demonstrate limited intervention in plantation affairs unless violence became public or interfered with taxation. Historical studies of plantation architecture show that hidden rooms were rarely recorded in official plans. Their omission suggests awareness of their questionable function even at the time of construction. The reopening of sealed spaces in the 1880s occurred during a period of reckoning, quiet, incomplete, and administrative rather than moral. 1880s documentation identifies no singular individual responsible for ordering such rooms sealed. Instead, property deeds and probate records show generational transfer of plantations, with subsequent owners inheriting structures without explanation. Laborers tasked with opening sealed rooms were typically county-hired or indebted tenants. Medical reports from the era described respiratory illness among workers exposed to long-sealed interiors, though such incidents were rarely connected to specific locations. Black communities living near plantations carried oral histories, though these were excluded from formal archives. Historians later noted the disparity between written records and lived memory. The act of opening the room was procedural. Its consequences, however, extended beyond documentation. Newspapers from the 1880s rarely elaborated on findings from sealed rooms. Language remained vague. Court records do not show follow-up investigations. Historians interpret this absence as deliberate restraint. Reconstruction-era institutions were fragile. Acknowledging past abuses threatened social stability. Silence, therefore, became the official response. The room, once opened, was not preserved. Contents were discarded or reabsorbed into the structure. No marker was placed. By the late 19th century, attention shifted elsewhere. Yet historians now view these sealed rooms as material evidence of unrecorded systems of control. The silence surrounding them remains part of the historical record.